What's going on, guys? Welcome to a video. Um, yeah, I want to talk about the RLCS format. I'm a huge format nerd, and this is, as you can see, this is what my dream RLCS format would be. We're kind of in this, as we're recording this video, we're in this kind of long. It's not really an off season, but it's just this kind of really long break between Major Two and the World Championship. And that's kind of what got me thinking, like, what could fill this gap. But also, like, I've kind of thought about the format for a while. I've had things I like about it, things I don't, things I like from kind of old formats that don't exist anymore. And so I wanted to compile all that down into like what would be my dream scenario for like the format for one RLCS season. And so that's what I'm making this video for. And it's a video because I've got a lot to say. I'm a huge yapper, and you'll kind of notice that in this video. So this video is probably going to be pretty long. I don't know how long it's going to be yet because I'm recording it, but I'm sure you can tell from the timestamp. So I'll be splitting this into kind of various categories. The first thing I'll do is I'll go through kind of like what I call like my philosophy when it comes to this, just like what I liked about old formats, what I don't, what I'm trying to achieve with my format that I'm gonna lay out here, and then I'll try and get to the crux of what I'm suggesting, the kind of rundown, the TLDR of my format. So if you want to just watch that, that'll be kind of like in that kind of video bar on YouTube. So you can just kind of look at that to talk about it. And then kind of the back half of this video will just be me rambling about why I made the decisions that I did with the format. And more details if there are any questions about that. So yeah, so let's get into it. So first things first, yeah, let's talk about this philosophy. I feel like this just mainly, like, you could skip this section, you can skip to the next timestamp in the kind of chapters menu, but this is just like to contextualize the things that I want in a format. So mainly this format is inspired by the 21-22 and 22-23 format. Just for some context, that's when I started watching Rocket League, and so and I was a big fan of that format. So a lot of things kind of will harken back to that. One thing, the next kind of bullet point here, we're bringing back the world's wildcard. I love the world's wildcard. I think a lot of people really liked it, so that's something I really had to fit into my format here. But I also want to keep LCQs. I think LCQs are a really nice new addition that have been added to the RLCS recently. So yeah, that's kind of like a bit of the old, bit of the new. I put a dress calendar here. That's the thing where it's like this with this long break between Major 2 and Worlds. So that's the main thing that I would be, I guess, quote unquote, addressing with the calendar. Doesn't address every issue with the calendar, but I think some of those are kind of hard to deal with. But anyway, yeah, I'll get more into that kind of later. I want to allocate region spots fairly. This is just like, I think every season we kind of just say, oh, like, we need to get rid of a spot from OCE2 because they suck. I think there should be kind of a more mathematical way of determining what the region spots would be. And so I think I came up with a system for that that works. And then this final bullet point, this is kind of like what's unique about my idea, that this is the kind of most outlandish idea. I sort of want to integrate a form of league play, which is interesting because I actually don't like league play very much. I don't think league play is better than our circuit system that we have, but I think I have a way where that could work pretty well. And then this final bullet point at the bottom, yeah, this is only about 3v3, so this won't talk about 2v2 or 1v1. This is just for RLCS 3s. So yeah, for 2s and 1s with my format, you can maybe like fit them in where they fit in the calendar. But yeah, this video is kind of not about that. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, I've talked long enough, so let's get into what I'm suggesting. Okay, so this is the quick rundown. This is your TLDR. This is what you can listen to, think about it, and just skip the rest of the video if you want to, because yeah, this is really all it is. Everything else is just me yapping and giving more details. So the main thing, or first change I would make the majors formats different from each other, and I would also make the regional formats mirror the format of the major that those regional qualifiers lead up to. So split one, so yeah, so I should say this is basically just how the 21-22 season and 22-23 season worked. So you can see kind of the where the inspiration for that comes from. So split one would be Swiss. So we would have Swiss into the AFL kind of 8-team AFL bracket. So all of split one, the regionals and the major, that would be a Swiss tournament. I like Swiss at the beginning of seasons. I think it's a great way for a lot of teams to play each other. You kind of like figure out like where initial seeding doesn't really matter. I'll get into that a bit later. Split two would be groups. This is what the Paris major recently just was. You would have 4-team groups. 3 teams advance from each group into a 12-team AFL bracket. If you can't tell, I quite like the AFL bracket. So I think every having AFL brackets would be good. And then so this is my main idea that this video is kind of based off of, and I'll get into this more in the details. But I would have league play fill in the gap between Major 2 and Worlds. And so this is where the teams that are qualified to Worlds, they would play within their region, league play like, just like a round robin, and that would be additional points that could impact their seeding for Worlds. Now, when I say teams that qualify for Worlds, it would be slightly different than how teams have qualified this season, where the number of regional spots that each region gets, around spots that each region gets for Worlds, is based on their performance. So as of right now, it's just EU gets 5 spots that auto qual the World, and it gets 4. This would be slightly different, but it's in that vein where if you think about the teams that have qualified for Worlds, they would be playing league play regionally right now, just for additional points to alter their seeding. Also, I'm keeping LCQs, but every region gets an LCQ. So there's one LCQ spot for every region, so it's not just like your top 4 average placing regions. And part of the only way we can get this to work is to expand Worlds. And so we're bringing back the 21-22. This is basically copy paste. So we're just bringing back that format. The Worlds wildcard is back. That way we're going to get 24 teams to Worlds, 8 that auto qual into the main event, and then the next 16. So teams 9 through 24 would be in that wildcard stage. And then the Worlds format beyond that, pretty much just the same. It's always been. It's going to be your doubly limb GSL groups into an AFL format. And then, so I mentioned region spots for the following season will be based on whichever teams make top 16 of Worlds, and that's based on what happens in the wild card. So, I tried to get through that, I think, as quick as possible, just these kind of bullet points. This is what my dream format would look like. Then rest of this video, I'll be split up into different chapters where I just talk about each additional point, what I mean by kind of why I think this would be a good change, or just maybe not a good change, but maybe why I would like the change. So, okay. The main thing with major formats mirroring regional formats, I really liked how in the past, in the 21-22, 22-23, I mean, it's hard to say, but in those seasons, I was a big fan of how the splits really felt unique from one another because you were playing a different style tournament every single major, and in the regionals that led up to the major. So I was a big fan of that, and so I think that would be great. Right now, I feel like every regional sort of just feels the same. It's always the same format every single time. The majors don't feel too different from each other. I mean, we had in 2024, we just had every major was Swiss. I think Worlds was Swiss too. 2025, I think was also Swiss, but then Worlds was different. And then this season, we're doing groups. It's just like Major 1, Major 2 don't feel all that different from each other. I think it would be great to vary it up. So Major 1 is Swiss, Major 2 is groups. I don't know. I'm a fan of kind of changing how things kind of how things are throughout the season. That's Swiss into AFL bracket. I kind of talked about this a second ago, but just to expand on this point, I think Swiss is a great format to start a season. Because in Swiss, that's when you get the best chance to play the teams that are close to you and prove that you're better than them, right? So, like, for example, let's say you're an 8 seed, right? In Swiss, you're going to have better opportunities to play up, play the 7 seed, play the 6 seed, play maybe the 5 seed. And if you're better than them, you can kind of like play up, gain more points. The next event, you'll be seeded higher than those teams are. Versus like groups, which is why I put it for Major 2. If you're the 8 seed, you're going to be in a group with the 1 seed. And then, like, even if you're pretty good, that initial seeding is kind of killing you because of the group that you're in. And so it's a lot easier to kind of alter that in Swiss. I like how Swiss is less kind of prone to bad initial seeding. At the beginning of the season, obviously teams are there are new teams formed, like a lot of things are very different at the beginning of the season. So I like Swiss at the beginning of the season, but I don't want it to be Swiss the whole way through. So Major 2, I have it as the group stage format that we currently have at Worlds. So I've said like Major 2 and Worlds this year is going to be that format. I like groups. I know groups is kind of controversial. But I think Garrett's made this point that yeah, it's nice to go into a major and be like, I know which teams are going to play. Like you kind of hype up like, oh, this match is going to be nice. Which group's the group of death? Which group's the group of life? I like all of that. So I think this kind of builds a bit of hype. I do think Swiss is probably like the best format, but I think always Swiss all the time can get a little boring. Again, I just like variety here. Okay, so I've mentioned here a calendar. I'll have a spreadsheet later on that I'll show to kind of show how everything fits into the calendar. But for the majors and regionals, the regionals would start in January. And then major one would happen sometime late March, and major two is kind of early July. Is how that would look. So a bit later than they are this season. The reason it's later this season is because this season there was a kickoff LAN that was in like December of the last year. So I kind of like how when every season is just it's all contained in one calendar year. It's like this is the 2025 season or the 2026 season. Technically, this year the 2026 season started in 2025, which I thought was a little weird. So that's this only kind of small change there. So yeah, this hopefully isn't too much changed here. So let's move on. I'm actually going to talk about Worlds first. I mentioned the league play kind of system idea that I had, which will happen before Worlds, but to kind of contextualize that, I feel like I need to talk about the Worlds format that I would have in my format. So you'll notice, again, this is where that inspiration from the 21-22, 22-23 seasons comes from. It's very similar, mainly in that the wild card is back. So I think I think the wild card is very popular. So I think a lot of people will like this. So the way world spots worked in those past seasons is you had 8 spots that would qualify directly to Worlds. They would go to the main event. This was based on the region rankings, based on the results at the time it was 3 majors, but now it would be the 2 majors that have happened. So that comes back. So whichever 8, it's not whichever 8 teams, but it's whichever 8 region spots. So like your EU1, MENA 1, EU2, NA1, right? Those spots, whichever 8 do the best over the 2 majors, those go directly to Worlds, and then that leaves 16 spots for the wild card. I want every region to have an LCQ spot, so 7 of those 16 spots are for LCQ spots, which leaves 9 as those like ranking spots. So if you remember, again, back in the old wildcard format, what happened was the teams that didn't qualify to the World's main event, you would get those next up teams in the rankings would qualify for the wildcard. So let's say in EU, let's say 4 teams qualify directly to Worlds. That would mean that your 5, 6, and 7 ranked teams in your EU regional rankings would qualify for the wild card. So this would be what these ranking spots are, but I've kind of removed a lot of the ones off the bottom because I've allocated them for LCQs. So we get 1 per region, just 1 additional spot that doesn't qualify directly to Worlds goes to each region. That leaves 2. Right, so if we do 1 per region here and 1 per region here, that's 14 out of the 16 spots at the wild card. So we need 2 more, and I would just give those 2 to whichever region has the best performing, like lowest seed. So what that means is like you are comparing the lowest EU spot, which is EU5 in this season, with the lowest NA spot, NA4, MENA 2, SAM 2, and then OCE, SSA, and APAC only get 1. So whichever of those spots, whichever 2 of those place the highest over the course of the 2 majors, those regions will get an additional ranking spot, right? Not an LCQ spot, a ranking spot at in the World's Wildcard. So if that was a lot of words, I do have a spreadsheet that kind of shows what this would look like in the 2026 season. If we simulated my format on the 2026 season, what that would look like. So if that was a bit confusing, I'll have an example later to kind of show exactly how that works, and I'll get to that in a little bit here. So and yeah, so that would be your wild card. World Championship format is the same as before. You get your GSO groups, your 2 8-team groups, 4 teams advance in per group. That goes into your top 8 AFL bracket. This is just this is the regional format that we've been seeing the past 2 seasons. This is also the Worlds format from last year. So it's pretty familiar. I think it's a great format. So yeah, and this is also different from the 2 major formats that we saw as well. And then also, just so you could kind of see there on the slide, I would make everything best of 7. I thought that was, I really like that this is how the Worlds used to work. It was like every single series at Worlds, including the wildcard, was best of 7. I think it makes it feel unique from the other events. It makes it feel like really final. Like everything here, it's like it comes down to the wire. Every team, no matter how good or bad you are, you have your chance in best of seven. And if you want to win, you have to win a best of seven. But if you're going to be eliminated, it's going to be in best of sevens as well. You're not going to have any unlucky kind of best of fives that kind of happen. I know this might be a little controversial because I think best of sevens are long, and a lot of those series, I think it was like in 2022 or something, it was like 59 out of 60 series could have been decided by best of five, and nothing would have changed. But I like this. This is a small point, but it's something that I like. And as for the calendar, this would fit in sometime in October. And so from July to October, there's still a big gap. This is where I guess the crux of this video comes from. This is like the newest idea that I have. So everything I've mentioned is kind of just bringing back the old format. This is where I feel like I'm introducing something pretty new. I mean, okay, league play is not new, but the way it kind of works here, I think, is pretty interesting. So the teams that auto qual to Worlds would be eligible to play in league play, and this depends on how many teams from your region qualify to Worlds, but in this case, this means that this includes those top 8 like region spots that I mentioned that go directly to the main event, but this also includes those ranking spots that go into the wild card. All of these teams would qualify to Worlds. And so if you count, there are 24 teams at the World Championship. The bottom 7 will be given to LCQ spots, which means that there are 17 teams after the 2 majors are finished. There will be 17 teams that will be auto qual to Worlds, and so these 17 would be the ones that would be kind of eligible for this league play idea that I have. And so, okay, some regions like OCE, APAC, and SSA, you can see from the bottom, those regions unfortunately only get 1 team each that qualify to the World Championship. You can't have a league play with 1 team. So those regions, if your region doesn't get enough teams that go to Worlds, you wouldn't get a league play. And really, this league play is probably mainly going to be kind of EU and NA focused. But the idea here is that the teams that are auto qual to Worlds can improve or lose their seeding based on this league play, where you would play for, I think, maybe like 5 points. I think it would be fair enough for each team to play for 5 points per match. So let's take EU, for example, right? So in EU's case, if you took the top 6 in teams from this season, we would get KC, Gentlemates, Vitality, Ninjas in Pajamas, Man City, and GK. These are your top 6 in EU after the 2 splits are finished. EU 1 through 4 were top 8 after the 2 majors. EU 1 through 4 all like were top 8 region spots. And so we can see KC down to Ninjas in Pajamas. These 4 teams will be auto-qualified to the World Championship main event because EU dominated this season. And then Man City and GK are auto-qualified to the wild card, but they can change their seeding. Like, let's say Man City is only behind Ninjas in Pajamas by 15 points. If we assign 5 points per league play game, that means that each team could win up to 25 additional points through this league play. So Man City, in theory, if they crush the league play, they could hop NIP. They could take that top 8 spot. They could take that auto call into the world's main event and bump Ninjas in Pajamas down. We can look at NA here. Energy and Shopify very close here. Right now, Energy is going to be the 1 seed going to Worlds. But with this league play, Shopify and Energy, they would play each other. They would also play SSG and Virtus Pro here. They would have a chance to duke it out if Shopify or Rebellion go 3-0 and Energy loses to Shopify. Hey, Shopify would take that number 1 spot. And so, yeah, this is where... I think this league play would give an opportunity for just more 3v3 before Worlds, while also kind of like limiting it, right? You kind of get a sneak peek of what form these teams are in before Worlds, but in kind of it's sort of low stakes because if we take like KC, they're 11 points ahead of the Gentlemates. So as long as they get at least 15 out of the 25 possible points, if they win 3 series, they can secure that 1 seed. So it's not like it's not super urgent for them to win these games, but I still think it's cool that you can each week be like, oh, KC plays Vitality this week. I think you could build that kind of hype that I think people used to really like about league play. That each week it's like there's just the 1 match, you got to pay attention to that match. So I think this would be a fun way to bring league play back. One thing here, obviously with Mina and Sam here, in this case, only 2 teams are qualifying for league play. That's not really a league play, that's like a show match. So one idea I was playing with is, also because it's only worth 5 points. Actually, between Made in Brazil and Furia, those 5 points really matter. But between Falcons and Twisted Minds, Falcons are never catching up. Even with my suggestion I'm thinking of, they wouldn't catch up either way. But I was thinking maybe you could add a stipulation where if a region has a league play of only 2 or 3 teams, you can make them play a double round robin, just because, like, if it's 2 teams, that's 1 match. If it's 3 teams, that's 3 matches. So like, I mean, you could just defer more matches. You could make it a double round robin if there's less teams. I don't know, kind of toying with that idea, but yeah, I think I've kind of yapped enough. The nice thing also here is that the LCQ and the league play can actually happen at the same time, because all the teams that are qualified for this league play are obviously, they have auto qual to World, so they would not be playing in the LCQ spots. So when it comes to the calendar, this would happen kind of through August, right after July, after that Major 2, we would go into this part of the season. It kind of ramps down a bit. I think the stakes aren't as high. Well, the stakes are very high for the LCQ, but for these teams that are auto qualified to Worlds, the stakes aren't as high, but it's still a good chance, I think, to kind of see these teams play before Worlds. Yeah. So I mentioned. Okay, so this will be the last slide, but we'll come back to this. I did promise that I would pull up a spreadsheet to kind of show exactly how these points work. So let me do that. All right. So let's talk about how Worlds would work this year in my format, right? So this is pretty similar to how the World's spots used to work in that, again, the 21-22, 22-23 season. So we just take the region spots, see how many points they take over the course of 2 majors. We can see here, of course, EU won. They won both majors, so they're going to be the 1 seed going to Worlds. MENA won, and EU2 each made 1 grand final and top 4 in the other event. MENA got top 2 in the more recent major, so that's why they have more points here. I mean, these points are taken directly from the number of RLCS points that these majors are worth. So yeah, we do that all the way down. We see that these are the 8 region spots that get your auto qual into the top 8, and you can kind of see I filled in as well what that looks like in terms of what the teams are. And remember, right, these KC Mates, Vitality, like, these teams are playing a league play, so Energy and Shopify, they could swap. NIP, they could fall out maybe to Man City, that sort of thing. Yeah, so we can see here, this is kind of the world spots. I've highlighted all the 24 kind of spots that would be at Worlds. So yeah, we can see we get our top 8s. These guys are going directly to the World Championship. You can see I've highlighted in red all your LCQ teams, so that's 1 per region. And then we can see there are ranking spots below those top 8s, obviously above the LCQ spots. These guys would qualify directly to the wild card. And then we have NA and EU get 2 instead of 1. And so this is where I was saying the region spot, each region's lowest spot is competing for their region for who will get that extra ranking spot. And this is something that I've seen, like, if anyone watches Gibbs videos, like format videos, how right now the LCQs are given to the best average placement, when, if you think about it, they should really go to what I'm saying here, where it's like you are comparing the lowest spot from each region, because like EU is always going to have a really high average placement, but if EU5 is bombing out of every event, like, why would we bring EU6 in? Okay, I say that, obviously EU5 is not bombing out of every event, but that's kind of an example, right? If EU1 was winning everything, we shouldn't give it a spot to EU6 if EU5, EU4 are bombing out, like, if that were the case. So this is where those extra ranking spots go to the regions with the best performing lowest spots. And so, okay, yeah, so that would be EU5, NA4, Sam and Mina 2, OCE packet, SSA. So EU5 is the best, so they get 1 additional spot here. And then actually NA, Sam, Mina, and OCE are all tied with 9 points. This is where I'm hoping Swiss in Major 1 will solve this. A lot of this is because of the group stage format, where yeah, like 4 teams tie for last place. Only 2 teams will tie for last place in the Swiss. And so hopefully that will kind of break this up a little bit more. But yeah, NA and Sam I put over Mina because they performed better in the most recent event. That's, I think, a pretty common tiebreaker. As for between NA4 and Sam 2, I think NA4 probably had a higher initial seed going to this tournament. I mean, this could easily have been Sam getting that extra ranking spot, but for the case of this, I've given it to NA here. But yeah, so that would be how, that's if we saw on this last slide, that's how I kind of highlighted this. That's where these spots came from. So if we go back here, yeah, we can see these. This is how we became. This is how we got our 24 teams that qualify for Worlds. You can see I've listed just the rankings from each region, and included some teams here that up to like the LCQ and maybe a few teams underneath it. Yeah, so let's now talk about this final slide I have. So regional spot allocation. Again, this is where I said I think regional spots should be allocated more kind of quote unquote mathematically, rather than just being like, oh, like after the season, like, oh, Mina's pretty good, maybe we give them another spot. Maybe OC is pretty bad, maybe we take away a spot. I think this would be a nice way to allocate regional spots between seasons that kind of reflects how the regions are actually performing. And so basically, in theory, this would just be whichever top 16 teams are at the World Championship. So this is like after they play the wild card, you'll get 16 teams. Those 16 are, in theory, your top 16 regional spots, right? Because the wild card is where all these teams come in, and then you figure out which teams, which regions can actually perform. So this is where, sorry to say, but like your SSA is probably getting filtered out. Your APAC's probably getting filtered out by the wild card. But this is how at Worlds we get 16 teams that are all really competitive. And so in theory, those 16 regional spots should be the 16 spots that we get at the majors, right? So we'll take the top 16 from World Championship as a starting point. Now, we obviously don't want to exclude SSA and APAC from the majors. So any region that is not represented in the top 16, you would have to bump them in to that top 16 and then obviously remove spots from other regions to make room for them. And so the way you would remove teams is, in theory, you would just take from the bottom, but I think that in my system, I would want to remove any regions like fifth spot or worse. Like I would prioritize removing spots from regions that that have a lot of spots first before taking just directly from the bottom. And so that would be like, if EU5 did better than OCE2, I would still want to remove EU5 before OCE2. And this fifth could be sixth or worse, depending on how much you value basically EU or NA, probably mainly EU. But so that's how that would work. And then this kind of last bullet point that I have, each region, in theory, their spot would only change by they could only gain one spot or lose one spot between seasons. So like, let's say NA bombs out in the wild card, only NRG and Shopify Rebellion make top 16. NA would not go down from 4 to 2 teams immediately. They would just go down to 3. This is so hopefully there's not so much chaos between seasons. But obviously, over the course of many seasons, this could really shape to how the regional kind of strength actually is. And hey, it gives you another reason to watch the wild card. Again, a lot of this kind of boils down to a lot of the things that I'm saying kind of boil down to that world's wild card. So yeah, okay. So let me go back to that spreadsheet to kind of show you what this might look like. So this is kind of, in theory, the 16 teams in the system that would make it to the World Championship, right? So these are your auto qual to the top 8. These guys are already in the main event. This would be your kind of World's wild card, and I've just sort of like simulated where these teams might end up. I like, you could argue with me on which team could go where or where, but this is just like in like roughly what the teams might look like. And so I have these teams in the middle making it out of the wild card to make your top 16, these teams that we see here. And I've kind of broken it down by regional spots. So we have 6 EU, 4 NA, 3 MENA, 2 SAM, 1 UC, and then APAC and SSA do not make it out of the wild card. And so how you would get next year's regional spots from this is you would take APAC and SSA. They need a spot at the majors, so we would have to take 2 spots from these other guys and give it to APAC and SSA. In this case, because of the ruling that I said, where you would prioritize taking away regions that have their 5th spot or higher, EU would end up losing 2 spots because EU5 and EU6 would be the first 2 in my system on the chopping block. Maybe that's a little unfair if EU got 6 teams in the top 16. Heck, you could get 5 of these guys in the top 8, and then you're getting rid of EU5. Maybe that's a bad system. And so if you wanted to protect EU5 and say, okay, you the first thing is you get rid of any team that has their 6th team, because the 6th team, like, do we need 6 EU teams? Like that at a certain point, it's just like is this an international esport anymore? So if we just said, oh, EU6 would go, then this would look like 5. Um, and then you would take the next spot from the lowest performing spot. So let's say R8 makes top 16, but they bomb out. We would get something like this. Or maybe R8 does really well and Virtus Pro ends up bombing out. So it would look like this. You would take it from NA. So it would be based on the results at Worlds. But yeah, I think a region getting 4 spots is enough. That's 25% of the major. I think if you don't make top 4 in your region, like, it's like you can't be too disappointed about missing out on land if you're not top 4 in your region. So I would say I would prioritize getting rid of the fifth seed or the fifth spot from each region. But you could make an argument with especially how strong EU has been recently that maybe they deserve to have their fifth seed, their fifth spot at majors. Okay, I sort of forgot this part, so I'm adding this to the end of the video now. I did mention that I would kind of include what the calendar looks like, and I sort of forgot that, so I'm going to put this in. I don't know what part of the video I'm going to edit this into, but this is just kind of a week by week, up week 1 to week 52 of what the calendar might look like. So the beginning of this is going to look fairly simple. Like we have 6 weeks for our opens. I mean, this is pretty standard. One, EUNA, they'll kind of alternate back and forth. And then we'll have our major. Obviously, you need a gap for people to travel, get visas, maybe that sort of thing. And then we have, this should say open 4, 5, and 6, not 1, 2, 3. But again, you're kind of 3 regionals that lead into the major. Then we would have that league play system that I mentioned. LCQ, I put it here as like you could have something similar to this season where all your LCQs happen on one weekend. That could be cool. You could also run these LCQs in 7 separate weeks in this section. Again, the LCQs can run alongside the league play because those teams are separate from one another. And then you have a bit of a break, and then you get the World Championship, and then you have kind of a 2-month off season where I think that's enough time to kind of take a break. Get away from Rocket League, maybe play other events, maybe play FIFA EWC, that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know if EWC is scheduled in that time, but it could be a good time for teams to take a break, and then roster shuffle and roster mania, that sort of thing. I think that can sort of happen, and then and then we come back and do it all over again. So cutting in here. I don't know what part of the video this will be, but this is just to address what the calendar kind of looks like. I've been yapping for 30 minutes now. That is kind of what my dream format would look like. I'd love to hear any suggestions in the comments on the Reddit. I posted this there. Just kind of see what people think of this. I was I thought of this. I'm a big format nerd, so I've thought about this for a while. Thought of what things I like, what things I don't like. So I'd like to see what other people think, if this is a good idea, if this is a really bad idea. If there's anything I miss, like maybe there's a flaw with this system that I haven't really thought about. I'd love to know. I love talking formats. I love watching. I've watched like every one of Gibbs format videos. So yeah. I'll just quick go back to this slide. This is just to conclude what my ideas are. We would have the 2 splits. They would be different. We would have different formats across the splits. The major format would be the same as the regional format for that split. So I think your splits would be kind of unique from each other. Then before Worlds, in that kind of weird gap where regionals aren't really happening, I would have league play for the teams that autocard to Worlds for them to potentially get additional points to change their seeding going into Worlds. And then LCQs, I would expand this to every region. Every region gets at least 1 LCQ. And to accommodate for that, we have a wild card where we bring 24 teams to Worlds. Just the wild card is back. And then we have doubly linked groups into AFL for our Worlds format. It's a pretty standard. And then regional spots per season would be allocated based on Worlds results, and so that way the esport could kind of shift and mold based on which regions are getting stronger, which regions are getting weaker. That could kind of slowly evolve with that. So thanks for watching, and see you. I don't know. This is my first, maybe last video. I don't know. Bye.